a quiet black student, a stolen piano moment, a conspiracy buried for years. But when one haunting melody echoed to the auditorium, it sparked a reckoning no one saw coming. This is the story of Noah Bennett, the boy who turned silence into justice. The soft morning sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of Eastwood High's main auditorium, casting flickering streaks across rows of faded blue plastic chairs. The entire school had gathered for the Monday assembly. Whispers, quiet giggles, and the shuffled shoes filled the space with a restless hum. In the middle of the packed crowd sat a skinny black boy with neatly cropped curls and eyes fixed on the floor, Noah Bennett. Noah wasn't someone people noticed. He had no close friends, didn't join any clubs, and usually spent his lunch hour alone, reading a book or scribbling something in a worn-out little notebook. But that morning, he became the center of attention. Principal Everett, a middle-aged man with neatly combed salt and pepper hair, walked onto the stage with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His voice echoed across the hall as he lifted the mic. Today, we'll be starting with a very special performance from someone just as special. Let's welcome Noah Bennett, the quiet student best known for his silent concerts during detention, to come up and play a piece on the piano for us. The auditorium erupted, gasps, snickers, even a few mocking whistles. Some students pulled out their phones, ready to record the performance as a morning joke. Noah froze. Blood rushed to his face. His ears buzzed. He looked around, curious, mocking, even cruel eyes locked on him. His hands trembled as a voice urged, "Come on, Noah. Don't keep everyone waiting." He stood slowly, each step up the stage heavy as stone. His oversized uniform jacket swallowed his frame. Somewhere behind him, someone whispered, "Bet he doesn't even know a single note." The piano sat at the center of the stage, a well-used grand, lovingly polished over the years. Noah sat down, his palms slick with sweat. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at Principal Everett, now standing off to the side with a smug half-smile. He looked only at the keys, the one place that wouldn't laugh at him. Then he placed his fingers on the piano. No one in the room knew those hands had once played in the dark on a battered old keyboard in a cramped fourth-floor apartment where he lived with his grandmother. No one knew about the nights he spent alone, playing one note at a time like he was speaking to the memory of his mother. The music began, not flashy, not rushed, just low, resonant notes that filled the auditorium's hush like a soft knock on a locked door. The giggles faded. The phones, once lifted to capture a joke, slowly lowered. Even Principal Everett tilted his head slightly, frowning. Noah didn't look up. He kept his eyes on the keys, on the place that had taught him how to stay whole through the days that nearly broke him. When Noah struck the final note, a soft, low, haunting chord, the auditorium didn't erupt in applause. There was only silence, as if everyone was trying to grasp what had just happened. And in that moment, the silence said everything. No one quite knew how to react. And Noah didn't wait for them to figure out. He stood, gave a small nod, and walked off the stage as if nothing remarkable had just occurred. Under the stunned gazes of the entire assembly, he headed straight for the rear exit, slipping back into his usual rhythm, his quiet world. Later that afternoon, pale winter sunlight streamed through the worn glass of a third-floor apartment window in a crumbling housing complex on the west side of Fairhope. Noah Bennett trudged home, the weight of a frayed backpack heavy on his shoulders. He climbed the cracked concrete stairs, where the air smelled like mildew and reheated leftovers. His grandmother, Gloria Bennett, 67 years old, was standing by the stove, stirring a pot of lentil soup on a small gas burner when he came in. "You're home, Noah," she called without turning, her warm smile audible in her voice. "Noah, did you eat anything yet?" "I made a little soup." "I'm not really hungry," he replied, setting his bag on the floor before heading into a small bedroom and gently closing the door behind him. The room was bare, with peeling walls and a creaky wooden bed. In the corner stood an old desk, and on it a battered digital keyboard, once used by his mother. It no longer produced a full sound. Several keys were silent, the speaker long since blown out, but to Noah it was a treasure. It was the last piece of Danielle Bennett that still remained. Danielle had once been a promising pianist in Georgia, a classically trained talent invited to perform on stages both grand and modest. But it had all ended abruptly when she was falsely accused of embezzling scholarship funds at the music academy where she taught. Though there was no solid proof, Danielle was quietly, cruelly erased from the music world. Stripped of her reputation, she moved to Atlanta with young Noah, taking on part-time jobs just to stay afloat. But the pain never left her. A car crash 3 years ago took her life. Noah didn't cry much that day, but he hadn't truly smiled since. Noah sat on the old wooden chair in front of the keyboard. He placed his hands on the worn keys. Though sound no longer came clearly, the melodies were still alive in his memory. He closed his eyes and began to play. Not for anyone else, not to be heard, but for his mother. The distorted tones filled the room, but in his mind, the music was flawless, just like the time she used to sit him on her lap, guiding his fingers across the keys, teaching him rhythm, breath, and how to find the heart inside a song. "Play like you're speaking your truth," she once told him. And now, through broken keys and a cracked speaker, Noah began to tell his story. A story of loss, of hope, and of a gift the world had yet to see. Outside the door, Grandma Gloria stood quietly, a bowl of soup cooling in her hands. She heard each distorted note spilling to the narrow crack and let a tear fall. Not out of sorrow, but because she knew music had never truly left her grandson. Wednesday morning, the sky above Eastwood High was draped in a soft gray hush, mirroring the mood inside Noah as he stepped into the music classroom, a space most students treated like a break with background noise. The room was large, its cream-colored soundproof walls lined with old drum kits, empty guitar hooks, and an upright piano yellowed with age. Seated at the teacher's desk was an elderly woman with neatly pinned white hair and deep gray eyes. Mrs. Emily Hartwell, the new music teacher assigned to Eastwood High after the previous instructor retired unexpectedly. Students called her Miss Emily, though some secretly nicknamed her the Old Conservatory Ghost. Noah took his usual seat at the back of the room, trying, as always, to disappear. He paid no attention to the weak jokes from the front row crew or the restless glances from classmates, counting the seconds until the bell rang. But that day, Miss Emily didn't begin class with the usual theory lecture. "Does anyone here know how to play the piano?" she asked, her voice even and soft, like a warm harmony on a cold morning. Silence. "You don't have to be good," she added. "Just brave enough to sit down and touch the keys." Still silence until her gaze landed on Noah, the quiet boy in the back row who quickly turned away, as if afraid his thoughts had been read. "You there in the back," she said gently. "Would you like to try?" Noah shook his head slightly. "I don't really play much." Something flickered in Miss Emily's eyes, brief but sharp, like a glint of memory. After class, as students drifted out, she quietly approached Noah. "You're Danielle Bennett's son, aren't you?" Noah froze. She was one of my brightest students. "And a dear friend," she said, smiling faintly, her voice softening. "I recognized those hands the moment you walked in." Noah looked down at his hands, confused. "I just play a little at home." "Only someone who's truly practiced places her fingers like that, even when tapping a desk," she said gently. "If you like, I can teach you more. Not in this class. Just us. Privately." He hesitated, but her eyes weren't pressing, just inviting, offering a chance. "Okay," Noah replied, barely above a whisper. The first private lesson took place on Friday afternoon, after all the students had gone home. Miss Emily unlocked the music room, led Noah inside, and simply said, "Sit at the piano. No need to say anything. Just play the way you do at home." Noah sat down, placed his hands on the keys, and played. As the first notes rang out, Miss Emily closed her eyes, not because she was tired, but because she was listening to something beyond technique. She was listening to the soul of the music, pouring out from the trembling fingers of a quiet boy. When he finished, she nodded slowly, then said only one sentence. "You don't need permission to play like that, but you do need protection." Noah didn't know at the time, but in that moment, he had found the greatest teacher of his life. The following week, those after-school piano sessions with Miss Emily became the only place where Noah felt like himself. Every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, after the final school bell rang, He would quietly slip into the music room, sit at the piano, and let the notes guide him home. And then, on an ordinary afternoon like any other, Noah's life began to change course. No one noticed that Madison Layton, a popular junior known for her social media following, happened to walk past the music room while Noah was playing an original piece he'd composed. She recorded just a few seconds of video, planning to post it later as a silly clip for laughs. But that night, the video took a different turn. A mysterious kid from Eastwood High plays piano like a movie soundtrack, the caption read. And by morning, the views had skyrocketed. Comments poured in. Who is this kid? Sounds like something Hans Zimmer would write. How have I never heard of him? This is real talent. Noah had no idea until the next morning, when his phone buzzed nonstop with messages from classmates, many of whom he'd never even spoken to. His name showed up on the school's student spotlight board in the hallway. A few teachers started to smile as they passed him in the corridor. People who, until yesterday, had only seen him as a shadow. But not everyone was pleased. Inside the main office, Principal Everett gripped his coffee mug tightly as he watched the video on an iPad handed to him by his assistant. His expression darkened as the piano filled the room through the small speakers. That's him, he growled, eyes locked on the screen. Yes, 10th grader. Noah Bennett, the assistant replied, flipping through a file. No notable achievements. Average grades. His mother used to be a music teacher, fired more than a decade ago. Everett said nothing, but the fingers gripping his coffee mug had turned pale. The video ended, leaving behind a heavy silence. Take it down. Now. All copies, he snapped, his voice as sharp as a paper cut. And find out who recorded that video. After his assistant left the office, Principal Everett sat down slowly, muttering under his breath. History always finds a way to repeat itself. That same day, an unexpected announcement was sent to every classroom. Students are strictly prohibited from recording videos on school property without prior permission from administration. Violators will face disciplinary action. Noah's name wasn't mentioned, but everyone understood the message. That afternoon, when Noah walked into the music room, Miss Emily was already there, her eyes heavy with sadness. What's going on? Noah asked, sensing something was wrong. Someone from the principal's office came by. She sighed. They said this piano will be locked outside of school hours. For asset management reasons. Noah looked at the piano as if a part of him had just been stripped away. But I just wanted to play. I know. Miss Emily placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. But there are people who can't bear to see light, especially when it doesn't come from where they expect. Noah said nothing, but inside his chest, the music still pulsed. He knew, even if they locked the piano, they couldn't lock away the notes that lived inside his heart. That night, back in the small second-floor apartment of their aging building, Noah turned on his broken keyboard. Some keys were long silent, but his fingers still danced across them, finishing the melody as if to rekindle hope. Outside the window, Atlanta's streetlights blurred behind a veil of night fog. But inside that small room, the music glowed like a silent defiance. They may hate, but they can't extinguish. A week later, something had changed at Eastwood High. New posters lined the halls with shimmering letters. Spring Showcase, celebrating young musical talents. Noah's name appeared on the final performance list, bold and clear. Noah Bennett, original piano composition. Miss Emily had fought hard for it, submitting a special request to the school board to allow Noah to practice in the auditorium, where the grand Steinway piano sat like a sleeping treasure. It had been locked away for years, brought out only for the most prestigious events. At first, Principal Everett refused, but under mounting pressure from the online community and passionate music staff, he reluctantly agreed. Noah couldn't hide his nervous excitement. That piano, it felt like it breathed with his mother's spirit. Each key, soft as velvet, rang out with a resonance that sent chills through him. On the final afternoon before the big performance, Noah arrived earlier than usual. He sat alone in the empty auditorium, playing the climax of his piece, The Joke, over and over, a song he composed from years of pain, silence, and longing, shaped by everything he never had a chance to say. But the next day, when Noah arrived at school, the auditorium doors were sealed off with red tape. A bold sign plastered on the front made his heart drop. Incident: do not enter. Inside, the Steinway piano had been heavily vandalized. One side of its wooden frame was split as if struck with a heavy object. Several keys had been ripped off, and the strings were shredded like tangled threads. The scene left everyone present in stunned silence. Police were called, and just 2 hours later, the devastating news spread across campus. Noah Bennett had been placed on emergency suspension. The reason? A blurry hallway surveillance clip showed someone with a similar build exiting the auditorium late the night before, mere minutes after the alleged time of the incident. No one listened to explanations. No one asked why he would return to the music room with nothing but a small bag and bare hands. No one questioned how unclear the footage was, or that the face wasn't visible. They simply concluded based on his build, because he was Noah Bennett, a quiet black student, easy to blame. Miss Emily stormed into the principal's office like a whirlwind. Noah didn't do this. I was the last one to leave the auditorium. I locked the door. But before she could finish, she suddenly clutched her chest, her face going pale, and collapsed right in front of Vice Principal Whitaker and a crowd of watching students. The scene felt like it had been squeezed of air. An ambulance arrived within 7 minutes. Miss Emily was diagnosed with a minor stroke and rushed to the hospital for immediate care. News of her condition sent a wave of shock through Eastwood High. Some were sympathetic, others gossiped. But one thing was clear: Noah vanished from school. He returned to the small apartment where Grandma Gloria was already waiting. Her eyes were wet. Noah said nothing. He simply pulled a wrinkled sheet of music from his backpack, placed it on the table, then walked into his room and closed the door behind him. The world outside was crumbling, but inside Noah's mind, a melody refused to go silent. A final note still hung in the air, and he knew he couldn't stop here. The skies were a dull gray, casting even more gloom over the fragile cloud of faith Noah was trying to hold on to. During his 3-day suspension, he hardly left his small second-floor room. The broken keyboard sat silent in the corner, just like him. News of Miss Emily's sudden stroke made it feel like the whole world had collapsed again. But just when it seemed like all hope had been extinguished, Lena Carter showed up. The quiet yet sharp girl was the first person to enter Noah's silent world without mockery. "Noah, I need you to trust me," Lena said as she sat across from him. "I don't think you broke the piano, and I'm looking into it." Noah looked up, his eyes a mix of weariness and disbelief. Lena placed a thin folder in front of him. The security footage from the music wing, during the exact time of the vandalism, was deleted. I had my cousin in the district's IT department check. The system still has a log of who accessed it. Someone logged in at exactly 9:47 p.m., using Vice Principal Whitaker's ID card. Noah froze. Lena leaned in, her voice low but clear. "I think they're trying to frame you, but I need more proof." That night, a sophomore named Marcus, often disciplined by Mr. Callahan for being unfocused, texted Lena. I recorded him talking in the teacher's lounge. You want to hear it? The recording was barely a minute long, but it was crystal clear. Callahan's voice came through, mocking. "Kids from West Side like Noah are better off banging on trash, cans, and playing piano, unless it's to entertain rich folks." Noah's stomach twisted. He thought he was used to being underestimated. He had no idea it went this deep. Lena forwarded everything to one person she trusted above all, Taryn Westbrook, an investigative journalist her mother had once mentored during college. Taryn was one of the few Lena believed couldn't be intimidated by school district politics. 2 days later, Taryn stood at Noah's front door. Under the soft yellow glow of the porch light, she looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with determination. "Noah," she said, "your mom, Danielle Bennett, was a gifted music teacher. 16 years ago, she was accused of embezzling the music department's budget and lost everything." She paused. "But I was one of her students. I never believed that." From her coat pocket, Taryn pulled out a worn file folder, its edges yellowed and creased. I tracked down the records from her case. There are gaps, lots of them. And the person who led the investigation back then was Principal Everett. He was vice principal at the time. The air in the room turned to ice. Noah sat still. Every unanswered question, every broken dream, every wound he thought had scarred over, suddenly had a name. Your mom was framed, Taryn said, her voice trembling with fury. And now, they'll do the same thing to you. Noah said nothing. He rose, walked over to his old keyboard, and placed his fingers gently on the faded keys. But in his eyes, there were no tears, only fire. I won't let them do it again, he said quietly. The first rays of morning light streamed through the tall windows of Eastwood High's auditorium, casting reflections across neat rows of wooden seats. Tension filled the air as students, staff, and school board members gathered for a special hearing. All eyes turned to the long table at center stage, where Noah Bennett and his grandmother, Gloria, sat quietly, heads held high. Across from them, Principal Everett and Vice Principal Whitaker maintained rigid expressions, but the nervous energy around them was unmistakable. At the head of the board's table sat Ruth Maxwell, chairwoman of the district's education board, an older woman with a commanding voice and piercing gaze. She wasted no time in getting to the point. This hearing was prompted by a series of exposés published by Taryn Westbrook, supported by evidence Lena and a group of students had meticulously gathered. They had traced the deleted security footage, presented audio recordings of racially charged remarks made by Mr. Callahan, the history teacher who had consistently dismissed and belittled Noah in class. Taryn had also reopened the decade-old case against Noah's mother, Danielle Bennett, a brilliant pianist falsely accused of misplacing instrument funds during a part-time teaching stint at Eastwood High. "Let the hearing begin," Ruth Maxwell said firmly, tapping the gavel lightly against the table. "We have reviewed all documentation regarding the incident in the music room, as well as the formal complaints of discriminatory behavior from Eastwood High's administration. Now, Miss Lena Carter, you may speak." Lena stepped up to the podium, holding a neatly printed stack of papers. Her voice was clear and steady. "On the night before the final rehearsal, I saw Vice Principal Whitaker enter and exit the music wing at exactly 9:47 p.m. This matches the suspected time of the piano's destruction. I obtained the card swipe access logs from my cousin, who works in the district's IT department." Then came the audio recording, as Mr. Callahan's mocking voice echoed through the hall. "Kids from Westside like Noah belong banging trash cans, not playing piano, unless it's for rich folks' amusement." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some parents and teachers even stood up in shock. Reporter Taryn Westbrook stepped forward, holding a faded case file. Danielle Bennett was never given a hearing. The investigation report was signed by then Vice Principal Everett. The sole piece of evidence? A statement from a supply manager who was fired just weeks later. The room froze. You could hear a pin drop. When Chairwoman Ruth finally spoke, her voice cut through the silence with firm authority. After reviewing all submitted evidence, the board declares Noah Bennett is fully exonerated and his record reinstated. Principal Everett and Vice Principal Whitaker are to be placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. As for Mr. Callahan, a decision regarding termination will be issued within 48 hours. Thunderous applause erupted across the auditorium. Gloria clutched Noah's hand, eyes brimming with tears. Lena gave him a soft pat on the back. And just then, a representative from the Georgia State Youth Symphony stood up, smiling. "Noah Bennett, we would be honored to have you perform the opening piece at the Spring Music Festival. You've inspired an entire generation." Noah rose from his seat, eyes gleaming beneath the warm stage lights. He didn't need to say a word. His gentle smile said everything. That weekend evening, following the intense hearing, a quiet sense of anticipation hung in the air at Eastwood High. The school's main auditorium, once reserved for parent-teacher meetings or graduation ceremonies, now glowed with stage lights and a professional sound system. Every seat was filled. Students, parents, teachers, reporters, and even representatives from prestigious arts academies gathered in silence. All were ready for the Spring Showcase, a celebration of emerging musical talent. In the front row sat Gloria Bennett, holding hands with reporter Taryn Westbrook. Lena, Ms. Emily and several teachers who had quietly stood by Noah throughout his journey were also present. Backstage, Noah peeked through the curtains. He could see the crowd stirring with anticipation. The same faces that once mocked him now waited, eyes wide, for a performance they never saw coming. A host stepped onto the stage, voice filled with emotion. And now, the MC announced, "We invite you to join us in silence and respect for a performance that isn't just music. It's a journey from silence to voice, from ridicule to being heard. Please welcome Noah Bennett, performing his original composition, Echoes of Silence." Noah stepped out from the right wing of the stage, wearing a simple suit that his grandmother had saved every penny to tailor just right. His shoes, though polished, couldn't hide the wear time. He paused at a grand piano, a newly acquired instrument replacing the one that had been destroyed. And for the first time, he was seated before a real piano that matched the music in his soul. The auditorium held its breath. The black boy who had once been mocked, suspended, and pushed to the shadows of a broken system now stood at the center of the light. Noah closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and placed his hands on the cool ivory keys. The first note rang out like a question, fragile, trembling, much like the boy who once stood frozen in front of an entire school laughing at the idea of him performing piano. But the melody grew, layered, searching, stumbling, rising. It became the sound of suffocation, and then resistance. It became a story of rising from quiet anguish. The auditorium sank into music. Each note carried the weight of shame once endured. Each transition a step from pain to self-declaration. Those who once doubted Noah now sat frozen, mesmerized by the movement of his hands. When the piece reached its climax, Noah paused one deliberate, silent beat. Then he struck the final chord with force, a declaration. "I'm here. I was never silent. You just weren't listening." That final chord echoed through the space like a bell tolling truth. For a moment, there was no whispering, no judgment. Then a single clap, then another, and then the entire room rose, hundreds of people on their feet, applauding endlessly. Taryn Westbrook, sitting among the press row, wiped away a tear. "Not just a student," she whispered, "an artist." In her wheelchair near the stage, Miss Emily's eyes sparkled. She whispered to her nurse, "Just like his mother, but deeper, stronger." Backstage, Grandma Gloria held a worn music notebook to her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You did it, Noah. You and your mama both." And there, center stage, Noah didn't bow his head. He simply placed a hand over his heart and nodded. Not just to the audience, but to music itself, to his mother, and to everything he had overcome. As the applause stretched on, Noah Bennett stepped off the stage, not just with trembling hands from emotion, but carrying with him something long thought lost, belief in himself. News of Noah's performance, Echoes of Silence, spread like wildfire, an anthem tearing through stereotypes. Within a week, the video shared by reporter Taryn Westbrook surpassed 2 million views. Music institutions like Juilliard, Berkeley, and NYU all sent full-ride scholarship offers. But Noah chose to stay at Eastwood High until graduation, as a quiet tribute to the grandmother who gave up everything to raise him. Ms. Emily had just recovered from her stroke. Invited back by the school board to serve as head of the music department at Eastwood High. On the first day of the new semester, she stepped up to the front of the classroom with silver-streaked hair and a radiant smile, looking at Noah with the kind of warmth that only someone who had once known his mother, Danielle, could offer. Through Noah, it was as if her old friend had returned to life in every note he played. Inspired by her return, Noah and Ms. Emily launched a mentorship initiative called the Danielle Bennett Program, a scholarship and talent development program for underprivileged students with exceptional musical potential. Every weekend, they hosted workshops, inviting renowned black artists to speak, perform, and mentor the students. At the very first workshop, Noah stood at the center of a crowded classroom filled with high school students from across Georgia. He rested his hand lightly on the piano and spoke in a calm, grounded voice. "Music didn't save my mom from injustice, but it saved me. And if it can do that once, it can do it again for you, for anyone who dares to trust their inner voice." From a silent kid in the back of the class, Noah had become a guiding light for an entire generation. Not because he was better than anyone else, but because he stood up after being pushed to the very bottom. Someone once asked Noah what made him keep going. He smiled and replied, "Because I don't play to be heard. I play so others can be." And that's the kind of music no classroom can teach. By May, late cherry blossoms dusted the Eastwood High campus in soft pink. On the graduation stage, 17-year-old Noah Bennett stood in his deep navy gown, holding a printed version of the welcome speech that the acting principal had asked him to deliver in place of a formal address. But instead of reading, Noah walked straight to the grand piano placed at center stage and quietly sat down. No opening, no introduction, just complete silence. The very silence that once made him invisible, now the only language he needed to say everything. The music began, a new arrangement of echoes of silence, now gentler, wiser, and layered with a depth only time and healing could bring. It was no longer a cry for help. It was an answer. No longer pain, but acceptance and restoration. Each note fell into space between rows of students and families like early spring rain, pure, unadorned, yet deeply penetrating. When Noah finished, no one clapped right away. They needed a breath. Then, from the back row, a freshman student began to applaud. Slowly, like a tide coming in, the sound spread. A few teachers stood, then the entire school board. Several parents wiped away tears. No one needed to explain what the music meant. They felt it. Taryn Westbrook, the journalist who had followed Noah's story from the beginning, published an article after the ceremony titled, "The Sound of Dignity." The piece spread far beyond educational circles. It reached art communities, social platforms, and public forums across the country. In it, she called Noah a symbol of talents not buried because they weren't good enough, but because the world wasn't ready to listen. Across the nation, schools began re-examining how they identified gifted students, rethinking the narrow molds they had long relied on. Arts education initiatives emerged in underserved districts, some named after musicians who had once been dismissed or forgotten. As for Noah, none of these changes made him louder or more rebellious. He still played at community concerts, still walked his grandmother to church every Sunday, and still kept the broken keyboard in his room like a sacred relic. Because Noah understood one simple truth. He didn't need to shout to be heard. He just needed to keep playing. And every time his fingers touched the keys, he wasn't playing for himself alone. He played for the children who had been left out of the conversation, for the mothers whose dreams had been silenced by bias, for the quiet souls who never had the chance to raise their voice. And in that very stillness, Noah's music rose, carried not by volume, but by truth. And this time the world listened.